All right, so how do we kind of now functionally merge those two areas of responsibility and begin to accomplish village goals? Well, the village board has enunciated 6 areas of priority for the village. And that's on this sheet behind me, as well as, I think, an attachment to the agenda. Again, it's to preserve and enhance the quality of life in the Grange. So this board identified this actually 4 years ago in 2005, reaffirmed it in 2007, and we'll be having a planning session here in the near future with the village board, and we'll see if they reaffirm these, modify them, or come up with something completely different. Anyway, that's really the overarching priority, followed by, and this is in no particular order, followed by economic development, community development, maintaining our aging infrastructure, and pursuing capital projects. And here's a place, this is more like how it's positioned. And the board felt that the underpinning to all of this is to maintain the village's strong financial position, which we have, and then added in 2007 an additional foundation to all this is a recognition for structure support and development of staff resources. The village board, through its strategic planning process, identified approximately 25 goals and objectives. It's the manager's job to assist the board in prioritizing these goals and objectives, outlining an approach to accomplishing those, ascribing timeframes to complete them, and generally within 2 years to either accomplish or make considerable progress to complete. What happens then is after we come back from essentially a day and a half type of an exercise, we unpack, and the way we unpack is these goals are converted generally into performance goals for department heads. Department heads then incorporate these concepts into budget requests as may be appropriate. Some of these goals, though, require the attention of the village manager, essentially to be the project lead. And something that we do from a cultural aspect is that what we tell department heads is, look, everybody is a worker bee, even the manager. We're a small, efficient, and adaptive organization, and nobody just sits there and issues orders or dictums and then and then waits for things to come back to them. Everybody is expected to roll up their sleeves and become familiar with details and the like. It's really my way of creating accountability within the culture. All right, so all this stuff then comes back to the village board primarily through staff reports. And the general approach that we take in preparing staff reports is issue identification. We do analysis. Within that analysis, the framework that we give to department heads is, look, what are the legal implications, if any? What are the policy implications? What are the operational implications, including best practices and making sure there are no unintended consequences? And then finally, financial implications. Then with that, we identify what are the board options available to the village board based on that analysis, and then putting forth a recommendation. And this is a general template that you should see in virtually all written materials presented to the village board, whether it's an internal staff report for a workshop discussion or a board report. All right, so what do we do with all of this great information? How does the manager communicate and interact with the board? It's in several ways. Every week the village board receives a delivery packet. It contains general updates on projects and operations, village finances. Separate memos are produced on matters that are a little bit more complicated or standalone or of a priority or confidential nature. And within those reports, issues will be identified, basic information is presented, preliminary thoughts are expressed, not necessarily options or recommendations, but simply, hey, this is an issue that's come up, this is kind of how we see it, give us your feedback, let us know what you think, so that we pursue it or we don't waste our time, and we continue on with the existing list. Examples of things where this kind of process applies is video gaming and parking in the West End. With respect to video gaming, the General Assembly approved this activity earlier this year. It was shortly before the pawn shop issue came up, and we saw this as an accessory use that really wasn't compatible with the family orientation that the board had previously expressed, and so we've since proposed that the village board consider a ban on video gaming. and that's something that's making its way to the board, and we anticipate that it could be considered by the board as early as October 26th, which is our next meeting. Another one happens to do with parking on the West End. We've had a number of businesses express to us concerns with respect to competition between the various user groups. You've got shopper parking, employee parking, LT students, commuters, and the like. And so, oh my gosh, day and overnight residential parking, because we have a number of apartments and the like, and we need to provide for parking over there in addition to the central business district. So we've given the board some background on that. There's also been emerging issues with respect to residents now wishing to park on the street for 24 hours at a time. And again, that begins to speak to the issue of, we've got the ban, overnight parking ban from 2 to 6. And so how do we balance the issue of trying to be responsive to the concern for parking, but yet recognizing that this, the 2 to 6 parking ban is really for not only maintenance purposes, but primarily for crime prevention purposes. So we have that, and then we also have some businesses that are going through some significant remodeling and the like, and are displacing their employees and are having construction parking that needs to be addressed. And so we've come up with some alternatives for the board to consider, and among them is during the resurfacing of the downtown, there was an opportunity to create diagonal parking on Burlington from Ashland to Kensington. So we took what was about 17 parallel parking spaces, turned them diagonally, and we were able to gain 10 additional parking spaces. So we went ahead and did that, and again, taking into consideration feedback from the CEDC, the Community and Economic Development Commission, from a couple of years ago, actually just a year ago, on this issue. We went ahead and actually we were proposing for formal board approval at the meeting on the 26th. Our parking changes that would create additional, really utilization by supplantation, if you will. It's basically creating parking on the West End by moving commuter spaces that are immediately across the street from businesses, moving them over to in front of the bank and police and fire station, and then creating shopper parking and employee parking in that area. I think we're creating actually employee parking off of Burlington Avenue and onto the first couple of parkway stalls next to what used to be the Wyckoff Tweedy photography studio, and creating the employee parking at that particular location. So we're now starting to formally designate employee parking, and that's something that the CEDC had recommended that we take a look at about a year ago, and what we were trying to work through on that was, the thought was, again, short of creating additional surface parking, the thought was to allow for daytime parking of employees on side streets immediately, or not in very close proximity to the West End Business District. But now we've got this other issue, this other competing issue with residents who live in the immediate area that want to have on-street parking for themselves. So how do you do it for one and not the other? And then, you know, how do you accommodate both? I mean, that would be the ultimate desire.